Here, we list three indicators to illustrate Argentina's economic performance: the GDP per capita growth rate, unemployment rate, and inflation rate separately. First, its GDP per capita growth rate. The graph shows that GDP growth dropped rapidly after 2010. Why? As we all know, GDP per capita growth rate is related to GDP and population growth rate. The formula is shown here. When GDP growth rate is high but population growth rate is low, GDP per capita growth rate is high, and vice versa. Second, unemployment rate. The increase in unemployment reflects Argentina's economic recession and also reflects the government's inappropriate measures. Blindly raising tariffs has led to a reduction in investment. Third, its inflation rate. From graph 1, we can see that currency depreciation in recent years has led to continued growth in inflation. There are too much money chasing too few goods. Demand increases, but supply can't be enough, showing in graph 2. Thus, Argentina needs the government to take correct and proper policy to counter inflation and stabilize the economy. Besides, there are complex relationships between these three indicators. First, GDP per capita growth rate and unemployment are inversely related. When the economy is not in good shape, business may cut back on hiring. Here, in particular, when GDP per capita growth shows negative growth, unemployment rate increase rapidly. Second, there is usually an inverse relationship between unemployment and the inflation rate. However, according to the graph, the inverse compare isn't obviously. This is even a positive graduation trend in some years. This is because there are many factors that influence the inflation rate in reality, including economic and political factors, internal and external factors. So the results here are not consistently with the theoretical results. Inflation rate and GDP per capita growth rate also showing inversely related. High inflation erodes purchase power, reducing consumer and investor confidence. This can lead to lower spending and investment, which can eventually lead to slow or even negative GDP per capita growth, like Argentina here. Finally, we will talk about the factors resulting in those economic performance. As we all know, the financial crisis in 2008 has a serious impact on the global economy. Since then, Argentina has implemented import restrictions and currency cultures and has huge loan, which led to the devaluation of the currency. Later, the very important soybean export earnings has also dropped significantly because of output restrictions. Under the combined pressures of external and internal forces, the growth rate of GDP per capita has been limited, and even after the physical crisis and the irrational decisions after 2018, GDP experienced negative growth, and the economy suffered a severe recession.
To evaluate Argentina's macroeconomic performance, I choose Brazil as a benchmarking country due to their geographical proximity and economic similarities. Argentina and Brazil are neighboring large countries in South America. They all have mixed economics with elements of both capitalism and socialism. Besides, they have similar industry components. However, the fluctuations in exchange rate between Brazil real and Argentine peso can lead to inaccuracies in comparing their inflation rates. And the difference in regional influences and government policies can affect the comparison of their economic performance. The GDP per capita growth rate in Argentina has fluctuated significantly. There is an overall negative growth trend. Brazil also has fluctuations in GDP per capita growth rate. However, Brazil shows a more stable growth in GDP comparing to Argentina. The general declines in GDP are less severe than those of Argentina. Both Argentina and Brazil have an increasing trend in unemployment rate. Besides, the unemployment rate in Brazil is generally higher than that in Argentina, especially shown in sharp increase of unemployment in Brazil in 2015 to 2017. Argentina experienced the fluctuations of high inflation rates over the decade. Brazil's inflation rate is always lower and more stable than Argentina's inflation rate. In general, Argentina's inflation rate shows an increasing trend, while Brazil's inflation rate remains stable and has a slightly decreasing trend. The fluctuation and decreasing trend of Argentina's GDP could result of its high inflation rate and other factors like economic policies and external market environment. Brazil's comparatively more stable growth in GDP per capita is likely influenced by more stable inflation rate. Argentina's high and increasing unemployment rate could be linked to downward trend of GDP growth, which affects the business confidence and may result in structural challenges in labor market. Brazil's fluctuations in unemployment rate could be affected by its fluctuations of GDP growth as well, but the fluctuation is overall smaller than that of Argentina. Argentina's macroeconomic performance is more unstable than Brazil over the decade. Firstly, Brazil showed more stable GDP per capita growth rates and inflation rates compared to Argentina. Brazil's stable inflation rates demonstrate a more stable market for investment and can reduce investment risks and increase investment returns. Secondly, Brazil's unemployment trend is relatively steadier compared to Argentina. Although both countries have faced high unemployment rates, Brazil has a more moderate unemployment trend and thus can provide a more stable labor market for better economic growth and for lower investment risk. In conclusion, Brazil presents a more favorable investment market for investment environment compared to Argentina due to its more stable economic performance, lower inflation, and better labor market conditions.
We didn't use AI this time because for reports, we need exactly data statistic and comparative analysis. However, AI conclusions lack pertinence and are based towards ratings, make them unsuitable for use in reports that require high level for rigor.